Alright, so here are some of my ideas about the Moonshot in Progress project for creating some sort of new motor tape or actuator sort of thing. So there's 3 ideas that I currently have. This is the first one. So you know how with speakers you can always see the material part of the speakers like moving up and down? Well, what if we use these little speakers and then place them around a circle, like on a board, and then we could pulse the speakers in a special way, and then whatever is sitting on top of the speakers, then it should be able to turn. So it turns out people have already done this part up to this point, and they do have it working, and it's pretty cool. But they just stopped when they reached this point. Once they got the circle working, then it seems as though they didn't go any further to see if anything else could work. So I am curious to know what would happen if we used different patterns with the tiny speakers or tiny piezo elements. So if we arrange them like this, and then put things I don't know the proper term, but things that we wanted to drive like in between them, what would happen? Or if we put them on all of them, then what would happen? Could we make something go a certain path if there's piezo elements aligned like this, and then could we get something to go like do 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 like that? Or it would be really interesting to find out about this, and getting the parts for this is what I need help for the campaign. So yeah, and of course the whole tape idea, if we could use flexible PCB material like Pyrolux and just mill it with these little spaces for the piezo elements, then we could essentially make tape, and then, you know, this side could be sticky, and that would be pretty cool. Alright, so my next idea is a friend showed me this machine where it has these 2 inductors or solenoids, and then when they're powered it can vibrate this little bar up and down quite rapidly. And so I was wondering, would this be able to work with surface mount parts, and then maybe if we had the little bar mounted or attached to the board using a little pogo pin or some sort of little pin type connector, then what would happen if, again, these were arranged in different patterns? Like, see here, there's a group of 2. What if it's a star? What if you have it in 3D, like instead of a 3x3x3 LED cube, what if it was a 3x3x3 inductor cube, and it could move things? So I'm wondering, like, maybe we could have something, if it's attached properly, like have it move or tilt in a certain way depending on when these ones are fired, or like what would happen if there was a bar mounted in between these 2, and then depending on how you would turn it on, what would happen. So as for making this onto a tape-like material, I'm not too sure how this would actually work out, because I would imagine for the bar you would have to use some sort of like rigid material to begin with, but then you could like laser cut a bit of it away to make it sort of flexible. So that would be definitely experimental down the line. Alright, so the next idea is, this one may seem familiar because it was quite a popular video, but essentially you have this grid, and then there's these little magnet robots, and then by triggering certain points on the grid, then you can get the magnet robots to move. And it turns out that this approach makes the movement really fast and accurate. So I would just be interested in playing around with this and seeing where I could take it. This would, I mean, pretty much right away you could imagine this working on a flexible PCB. So I would mainly just want to figure out like how strong the magnets are being attached to the board and see what else you could make them do. This would all probably happen by mistake though, but that brings up a pretty good point. Here's my main methodology for all of the things that I'm going to be trying. So I'm going to be starting out like designing and making things, but then up to a certain point, then I'll start, learning more about like why and how this really works, and then figuring out how I can apply this new things that I've learned and then make it again. And then every single time that this iteration process occurs, there's usually some sort of bend in the road, and then it takes you along a different path, and then you're thinking about everything differently, and then eventually you can get something that's really cool. This actually happened for the AFSR quite a bit while I was making it. Originally I suspected it would have to be this giant structure that I would have to make, and it would take a lot more time. But what I ended up thinking about, like once I finished one iteration, was that, I could just, add wheels to it, and then that would allow the same sort of movement idea, and let people know like this is what the robot could be doing, and it does do it in real life. And it would also save some time from the build, which was important because the whole project only came together right before Maker Faire Ottawa. Alright, well, thanks for listening to the technical overview, I guess, or some of the ideas at least. Now it's time to start making, hopefully. Thanks for checking this out.